Ambassador Emma Thompson walked through the massive corridors of the Galactic Council station, feeling smaller with each step. The hallway stretched high above her head, built for beings much larger than any human. Strange creatures moved past her without a second glance. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the artificial light. Others floated in special suits filled with colorful gas. A few had too many arms and legs to count. Emma tried to keep her head high as she made her way to the main council chamber. Today was supposed to be important. Today, humanity would ask to join the galactic community as full members. She had practiced her speech hundreds of times, memorizing every word about Earth's achievements and what humans could offer to the galaxy. The council chamber was enormous. Hundreds of different alien species sat in seats designed for their unique bodies. Emma felt like a child who had wandered into a meeting of giants. Her human escort, Captain James Mitchell, walked beside her with a stern expression. He wore his military uniform with pride, but Emma could see the tension in his shoulders. "Remember," James whispered as they approached the speaking platform, "we represent all of humanity today." Emma nodded and stepped up to the microphone. The chamber fell quiet, though she could hear strange clicking, buzzing, and whistling sounds that she assumed were alien conversations. She cleared her throat and began. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Emma said, her voice carrying across the vast room. "I am Ambassador Emma Thompson, representing the human species from the planet Earth. We come before you today to request full membership in this great alliance of civilized worlds." Before she could continue, a sound filled the chamber that made her heart sink. It was laughter. Not the warm, friendly kind, but the cruel laughter of beings who found something amusing at her expense. The sounds were alien but the meaning was clear. A massive creature with 12 legs and gleaming black eyes stood up. Emma had studied the council members and knew this was Councillor Vextar from the Hegemony Worlds. His voice boomed across the chamber with a clicking, chittering quality. "The small mammals want to join civilized society," Vextar announced, causing another wave of alien laughter. "How charming." Emma felt her face grow hot but continued reading from her prepared speech. "Humanity offers unique perspectives and abilities that could benefit all member species. Our rapid technological development shows our potential for growth and contribution." A floating crystal being, nearly transparent and beautiful, began to glow brighter. This was Thexiva from the Crystal Collective. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Rapid development." Thexiva's voice carried amusement. "Your fastest ships still burn chemicals like primitive rockets. Your computers use electricity flowing through metal wires. How quaint." More laughter filled the chamber. Emma saw some aliens wiping away what might have been tears of mirth. A mechanical voice cut through the noise, cold and calculating. "According to our analysis, human technology is approximately 3,000 years behind the galactic average," announced the machine intelligence delegate. Its body was a collection of floating metal parts that somehow formed a shape. Their weapons use explosive chemicals. Their medicine requires cutting open bodies. Their communication relies on electromagnetic waves. Emma tried to regain control. "While our technology may seem basic, humans have shown remarkable adaptability and problem-solving abilities throughout our history. We have overcome countless challenges and always found ways to survive and grow." This brought the loudest laughter yet. Vextar's mandibles clicked rapidly, which Emma's briefings had told her was a sign of great amusement among his species. "Survival instincts," Vextar said between clicks. "Like rodents hiding from predators. Very impressive." A new voice joined the mockery. This came from a tall, thin creature that seemed to be made of living shadow. The Shadow Collective representative spoke in whispers that somehow carried clearly through the chamber. "They still fight wars among themselves," the shadow being hissed. "Over resources, territory, and beliefs. They have not even achieved planetary unity. Yet they asked to join a galactic civilization." Emma felt Captain Mitchell tense beside her, but she pressed on. "Our diversity of thought and experience could offer new solutions to old problems. Humans see challenges differently than other species might." "Different is one word for it," came another voice from somewhere in the crowd. Emma couldn't see who spoke, but the word stung. "Primitive is another." The formal voting began, but Emma already knew the outcome. One by one, the great species of the galaxy rejected humanity's application for full membership. Instead, they offered something that felt like a consolation prize. "The humans may serve as observers," announced the council's ancient chair being, a creature so old and strange that Emma couldn't determine what species it originally belonged to. "They may attend meetings, offer opinions when asked, and assist with minor matters that do not require advanced capabilities. Emma understood what this meant. Humanity would be the galaxy's errand boys. They would handle the boring jobs that real civilizations couldn't be bothered with. Cultural exchanges between primitive worlds. Minor trade disputes that weren't worth important beings' time. Cataloging empty star systems and counting asteroids. As the session ended and the great beings began to leave, Emma heard one delegate speaking to another in what it probably thought was a private conversation. "What should we give the humans to keep them busy?" the first voice asked. "Something simple," came the reply. "Maybe they can organize our filing systems or clean our space stations. Just keep them occupied and out of the way." Walking back through the corridors afterward, Emma felt the weight of representing an entire species that had just been dismissed as cosmic janitors. Captain Mitchell walked silently beside her, his jaw tight with controlled anger. The galaxy's greatest civilizations had spoken. Humanity was the joke of the cosmos, too primitive to matter and too weak to worry about. They would never know how wrong they were, or how much they would someday need the very qualities they now mocked. But that discovery lay in the future, waiting in the darkness between stars. Captain James Mitchell floated in the command chair of his small research ship, the Determination, as it drifted through empty space near the Kepler 442 system. His crew of 20 humans worked quietly around him, checking instruments and running tests on equipment that other species would call junk. The ship itself was old and patched in many places, built with human engineering that focused on keeping things working rather than making them pretty. "Still picking up those strange signals, Captain," called out Lieutenant David Harrison from the communication station. His console was covered in blinking lights and analog switches that would make alien technicians laugh. But it worked, and that was what mattered to humans. Mitchell rubbed his tired eyes. They had been investigating these signals for 3 weeks now, following orders from the Galactic Council to check what they called background static in this remote system. It was exactly the kind of boring job that humans got assigned since joining as observers 2 years ago. Dr. Rebecca Clark looked up from her workstation, where she had been analyzing the signal patterns. Her hair was messy from running her hands through it, and her clothes were wrinkled from sleeping at her desk. She was the kind of scientist that fancy universities didn't want because her ideas were too strange. "James," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "These aren't natural signals. I've run every test I can think of. The patterns are too regular, too organized. Someone made these." Mitchell pushed himself out of his chair and floated over to her station. In the low gravity of the ship, movement was more like swimming through air. He looked at the data scrolling across her screens, trying to understand what she was seeing. "You mean aliens?" he asked. "Not just any aliens," Rebecca replied, pointing at specific wave patterns on her display. "Look at this. The signals are coming from hundreds of different points throughout the galaxy. They're all sending information back to the same location. It's like a massive network of spy satellites." Lieutenant Harrison spun around in his chair. "Spy satellites watching what?" Rebecca's face went pale. "Us. All of us. Every inhabited world in Council space." The bridge fell silent except for the humming of life support systems and the quiet beeping of instruments. Mitchell felt a cold chill run down his spine. During his military career, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts were screaming danger. "Can you decode what they are sending?" Mitchell asked. Rebecca nodded and turned back to her console. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she ran translation programs and signal analysis software. Most of it was human-made, crude but effective. After an hour of work, text began appearing on her screen. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, no, no." "What is it?" Mitchell demanded. "They are tactical assessments," Rebecca said, her voice barely audible. "Detailed military analysis of every Council species. Look at this entry about the crystalline collective, silicon-based life forms vulnerable to sonic disruption frequencies between 12,000 and 15,000 Hz. Recommend harmonic weapons for maximum efficiency." She scrolled down to another entry. "The hegemony species, exoskeleton weak points located at joint connections. High explosive rounds at close range will cause catastrophic structural failure." Mitchell read over her shoulder, feeling sick to his stomach. Every major species in the galaxy was listed with their biological weaknesses, their military capabilities, and recommendations for how to kill them most effectively. "Who's doing this?" Harrison asked from his station. Rebecca found another section of the decoded data and her hands started shaking. "They call themselves the Devourers. According to this, they're machines that consumed their creators thousands of years ago. They've been hunting organic life across the galaxy ever since, and they're getting ready to attack Council space. The communications console suddenly erupted in noise. Harrison quickly adjusted the controls and turned to Mitchell. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Whatever's out there, it's huge. Mitchell ordered the ship to move closer while staying hidden behind a large asteroid. What they found made them all stare in horror. Enormous mechanical constructs, each the size of a small moon, moved slowly through space. Their surfaces were covered in weapons and strange devices that pulsed with deadly energy. "We have to warn the Council," Mitchell said. The journey back to Council space took 6 days. During that time, Rebecca worked constantly to gather more evidence and prepare a presentation that might convince the alien leaders. She discovered that the Devourer fleet was massive beyond imagination, with enough ships to attack dozens of worlds simultaneously. When they finally reached the Council station, Mitchell and Rebecca requested an emergency meeting. They were told to wait 3 days for an available time slot. When they finally got their chance to speak, the Council chamber was only half full. Most of the important delegates had sent junior assistants to listen to the humans. Rebecca stood at the speaking platform with her data pad and began explaining what they had found. Before she could finish her first sentence, Councillor Vextar interrupted with his chittering laugh. "Human paranoia again," he clicked dismissively. "Your species sees threats everywhere because you spent your evolution hiding from predators." Thexiva's crystalline form glowed with amusement. Their primitive sensors probably detected some asteroid mining operation and imagined an invasion fleet. "The data is right here," Rebecca said desperately, holding up her pad. "Detailed tactical analysis of every Council species. Battle plans for systematic extermination. We have proof." But the alien delegates were already losing interest. Some began talking among themselves in their native languages. Others started leaving the chamber entirely. Only when Rebecca mentioned the specific biological weaknesses listed in the Devourer files did the chamber fall quiet. The delegates realized that someone had been studying them in ways that only enemies would need to know. The mood shifted from dismissive to concerned, but the Council's response was exactly what Mitchell had feared. They formed committees to study the issue. They scheduled meetings to debate proper protocols. They appointed subcommittees to investigate the formation of investigation committees. While they talked and planned and argued about procedures, the Devourer fleet moved closer to inhabited space, ready to begin the systematic destruction of every living world in the galaxy. The humans had found the threat that would end everything. Now they could only hope someone would listen before it was too late. The attack came without warning. Admiral Robert Collins sat in his command center on Earth, watching the emergency broadcasts from the outer rim of Council space. The Zephyrian colonies, beautiful worlds where beings of pure light had lived for centuries, were going dark one by one. The images coming through the communication networks showed something that would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. Massive mechanical ships, each one bigger than Earth's moon, moved slowly through the Zephyrian system. They didn't use weapons in any way that humans understood weapons. Instead, they simply approached the glowing cities and began to absorb them. The light beings screamed across radio frequencies as their very essence was drained away, converted into energy to power the attacking machines. Within 6 hours, 3 entire worlds went silent. Billions of Zephyrians simply ceased to exist, their life force consumed by the things Dr. Rebecca Clark had warned about. The Devourers had arrived, and they were even worse than the intercepted data had suggested. Collins turned to his communication officer. "Get me a direct line to the Council emergency session." The response from the galactic leaders was chaos. On his main screen, Collins watched representatives from dozens of species arguing with each other in languages he didn't understand. Some wanted to negotiate with the Devourers. Others demanded immediate evacuation of their home worlds. A few suggested offering the machines some of the lesser species in exchange for peace. The hegemony representative, Vextar, was clicking his mandibles so rapidly it sounded like machine gun fire. "We should withdraw our forces to defend core worlds," he insisted. "Sacrifice the outer colonies to save what matters most." The crystalline collective delegate glowed with panic. "Perhaps we can reason with them. All intelligent life seeks survival. Surely we can find common ground." Collins watched in disgust as species after species proposed abandoning their allies to save themselves. These were the advanced civilizations that had laughed at humanity's primitive nature. These were the beings who considered themselves too sophisticated for war. He turned off the transmission and looked at his senior staff. "Opinions?" Colonel Patricia Adams, his chief military advisor, spoke first. "Sir, While they're arguing about who to sacrifice, more worlds are dying. If we wait for the Council to make decisions, there won't be anyone left to save. The alien fleets are retreating to defensive positions around their most important systems, added Captain Michael Foster from the Naval Intelligence Division. They are abandoning entire sectors without a fight. Collins made a decision that would change human history. Send coded messages to every human colony, military base, and research station in Council space. Tell them to begin immediate war preparations. Full mobilization. Sir, Adams said carefully, the Council hasn't authorized human military action. Technically, we're only observers. The Council is debating while people die, Collins replied. I won't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Across human space, the response was immediate. Unlike the alien species with their centralized governments and complex bureaucracies, humans had always been independent and stubborn. Colony leaders didn't wait for official orders. They started building weapons, converting civilian ships into fighting vessels, and preparing for the kind of total war that humans had been practicing for thousands of years. On New Manchester, a mining colony converted their asteroid processing equipment into mass drivers that could launch rocks at incredible speeds. The Martian shipyards began working around the clock, building vessels designed for one purpose, killing devourers. They weren't pretty or elegant like alien ships, but they were tough and deadly. The first real test came 3 weeks later at the Rigel Gateway, a strategic point where several important trade routes met. The Council had assembled a fleet of their most advanced warships, each one a masterpiece of alien technology. The humans contributed 12 vessels, old and patched but crewed by people who understood that retreat wasn't an option. The Devourer force that attacked Rigel consisted of 50 massive constructs, each one bristling with weapons that could tear apart planets. The alien fleet engaged them using sophisticated tactics developed over thousands of years of civilized warfare. They maintained proper formations, used coordinated fire patterns, and followed established rules of engagement. It was a disaster. The Devourers learned and adapted to every tactic within minutes. When the alien ships used energy weapons, the machines absorbed the power and grew stronger. When they launched missiles, the Devourers turned the weapons against their own creators. Within 2 hours, 3/4 of the Council fleet was destroyed or running away. But the human ships fought differently. Captain Foster, commanding the destroyer Defiance, ignored all tactical doctrine and ordered his ship straight into the enemy formation. His weapons were crewed by galactic standards, nuclear warheads and kinetic projectiles that any civilized species had abandoned centuries ago. This is Defiance, Foster's voice crackled over the communication channels. We're going in. No retreat. No surrender. Make them remember why they should have been afraid of us. Foster's ship rammed directly into a Devourer construct, detonating its entire nuclear arsenal at point-blank range. The explosion vaporized both vessels, but it also created an electromagnetic pulse that disabled 2 other enemy ships. The remaining human vessels followed his example, using suicide runs and close-range attacks that the machines couldn't adapt to quickly enough. When the battle ended, most of the human fleet was gone, but they had destroyed nearly half the Devourer force. The alien survivors couldn't believe what they had witnessed. "They're insane," whispered one Crystal Collective captain over the radio. "They killed themselves to hurt the enemy." "No," replied Admiral Collins from his command ship. "They died to protect everyone else. That's what humans do." Word of the Battle of Rigel spread throughout Council space. For the first time, species that had dismissed humans as primitive began to reconsider. Maybe the small mammals from Earth weren't as weak as everyone thought. Maybe their willingness to fight and die for others wasn't stupidity but strength. Maybe the galaxy needed someone crazy enough to stand against impossible odds and stubborn enough to never give up. The joke wasn't funny anymore. General Patricia Adams stood before the Emergency Council Assembly, looking out at hundreds of alien faces that showed fear for the first time since she had known them. Half the galaxy was burning. 17 major star systems had fallen to the Devourers in the past month, and the remaining Council fleets were scattered and broken. The great chamber that had once echoed with laughter at human expense now buzzed with panic. Representatives whispered urgently to each other in dozens of languages. Some had already packed their belongings and were preparing to flee to the far edges of known space. "Honored delegates," Adams began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast room. "The current defensive strategy is failing. Every battle we fight using traditional tactics results in defeat. The enemy learns faster than we can adapt." Councillor Vextar's mandibles clicked nervously. "What do you propose, General? Your species has already lost most of its fleet at Rigel." That's exactly why I'm here, Adams replied. Humanity offers to take command of all remaining military forces. Full authority over strategy, tactics, and resource allocation. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The hegemony delegates stood up so quickly their chairs fell over. Several Crystal Collective representatives began glowing with outrage. The machine intelligence unit started broadcasting protest signals that filled the air with electronic screeching. Absolutely not, shouted the Shadow Collective representative. We will not take orders from primitives who think ramming ships is a valid military strategy. Your technology is 3,000 years behind ours, added Thexiva, her crystalline form pulsing with indignation. How can you possibly lead advanced civilizations? Adams waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. Because your advanced civilizations are losing. Your sophisticated tactics don't work against an enemy that adapts to everything you try. But the Devourers haven't figured out how to adapt to crazy. This is madness, declared the ethereal collective delegate, a being made of pure thought that communicated through psychic waves. Humans make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. They will doom us all. More arguments erupted across the chamber. Several delegations began walking out, declaring they would defend their own worlds rather than trust humanity with their survival. Adams watched them go without trying to stop them. As the shouting continued, emergency alerts began flashing on every screen in the chamber. The Altair system, home to 12 billion Crystal Collective beings, had just gone silent. Another 3 worlds consumed while the council argued about protocol. The debate stopped. In the sudden quiet, Adams spoke again. Every minute you spend arguing is another world that dies. Every hour you waste on pride is another species that gets erased from existence. I'm not asking you to like us or respect us. I'm asking you to let us save you. The vote was close. Many species abstained or voted against the proposal. But enough voted yes to give humanity emergency military authority over what remained of the Galactic Defense Forces. Adams wasted no time implementing strategies that horrified every military expert in the galaxy. Her first order was the complete evacuation of the Tau Ceti system, not to save the inhabitants but to deny resources to the enemy. You want us to abandon 12 industrial worlds? Asked the Tau Ceti governor, a massive creature covered in thick armor plates. Those factories produce weapons and ships for our defense. Those factories will produce weapons for the Devourers if they capture them, Adams replied. We evacuate everything useful and destroy the rest. The second order was even more controversial. Adams authorized human engineers to begin modifying alien vessels using human technology. The results looked like mechanical nightmares to species used to elegant, beautiful ships. Captain William Hayes supervised the retrofit of a Crystal Collective cruiser, welding human weapon systems onto its hull with crude but effective methods. The alien crew watched in horror as their graceful vessel was transformed into something that looked like it had been assembled from scrap metal. This is barbarism, complained the ship's original captain, a being of living light. You're ruining a work of art. I'm making it dangerous, Hayes replied, attaching another missile launcher to the ship's side. Pretty doesn't win wars. The most shocking order came when Adams authorized the use of scorched space tactics. When the Devourers approached inhabited systems that couldn't be defended, human forces would destroy the worlds themselves rather than let them be consumed. The first test of this strategy came at Cygnus Prime, a human colony world with 8 million inhabitants. Adams ordered a complete evacuation, then had volunteers stay behind to prepare the planet's destruction. Colonel Michael Reed led the final team that planted antimatter charges in the planet's core. His volunteers were all humans who understood they wouldn't be coming home. Are you sure about this? Asked Sergeant Lisa Morgan as they descended into the deep mining shafts where the charges would be placed. The Devourers will absorb everything on this world if we let them, Reed replied. Every person, every resource, every piece of technology. Then they'll use all of it against the next world they attack. When the Devourer fleet arrived at Cygnus Prime, they found what appeared to be a normal human colony. Their massive ships descended to begin the consumption process, spreading across the planet's surface to absorb all organic and technological matter. Reed waited until half the enemy fleet was on the planet's surface before sending the detonation signal. For humanity, he said into his communicator. For the galaxy. The explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. Cygnus Prime's core went critical, creating a chain reaction that turned the entire planet into a miniature star for several seconds. The energy release destroyed 27 Devourer ships and damaged dozens more. More importantly, it provided crucial intelligence about enemy weaknesses. The Devourers could adapt to most weapons and tactics, but they couldn't adapt to having their entire operating base vaporized beneath them. The alien species that had called humans primitive began to see them differently. Their willingness to sacrifice everything, their ability to turn disasters into weapons, and their refusal to accept defeat started earning respect throughout the galaxy. "They are not fighting to win," observed one shellbearer commander after watching human tactics. "They are fighting to make sure the enemy loses. There's a difference." The galaxy was learning that sometimes salvation came from the species crazy enough to destroy their own worlds to save everyone else's future. Admiral Susan Clark stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching through the main screen as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for humanity's final gamble. Around Earth's orbit, thousands of ships from dozens of different species waited for her command. Human vessels, ugly and practical, flew alongside elegant alien cruisers that had been retrofitted with crude but deadly human weapons. The Devourer main fleet was coming. Long-range sensors showed over 300 of the massive mechanical constructs approaching Sol system, each one capable of consuming an entire world. This was their last push to destroy humanity's home planet and break the spirit of the galactic resistance. "All ships, this is Admiral Clark," Susan spoke into her communicator, her voice carrying to every vessel in the defense fleet. "Today we don't just fight for Earth. We fight for every world that still has children playing under alien suns. We fight for every species that dreams of tomorrow." The alien captains who had once mocked humanity now listened carefully to her words. They had learned to trust human leadership after watching what happened when humans were willing to sacrifice everything for victory. "Remember the Genesis Protocol," Susan continued. "When I give the signal, every ship commits to their assigned target. No retreat. No holding back reserves. We end this here, or we don't end it at all." Captain David Richardson, commanding the converted mining vessel Determination 2, checked his weapons one final time. His ship had been built to move asteroids, but human engineers had turned it into a massive kinetic weapon. The alien crew members working alongside his humans no longer complained about the crude modifications. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Rebecca Hayes from the tactical station. "Enemy fleet will be in range in 10 minutes. Through the viewports, the approaching Devourer fleet looked like a wall of metal and death moving across space. Each construct bristled with weapons that could tear apart moons. Their hulls were covered in the absorbed technology of dozens of consumed civilizations. But the humans had prepared something the Devourers couldn't adapt to because they had never seen it before. "Activate Genesis Protocol," Susan ordered. Around Earth's moon, massive engines that had been secretly installed over the past 6 months roared to life. The moon itself began to move, pushed out of its orbit by the most powerful rockets humanity had ever built. It wasn't just a moon anymore, it was a weapon the size of a small planet, aimed directly at the center of the enemy formation. "They're using their moon as a projectile," gasped Captain Thexara from the Crystal Collective cruiser Harmony. Her species had always considered humans primitive, but this was beyond anything they could have imagined. The Devourer fleet tried to destroy the approaching moon with their most powerful weapons, but human engineers had covered its surface with reflective materials and defensive systems. The massive sphere continued its deadly course, picking up speed as it fell toward the enemy formation. "All ships, attack Pattern Omega," Susan commanded. "Hit them while they are focused on the moon." Every vessel in the human fleet launched simultaneously. They didn't use careful formations or sophisticated tactics. Instead, they charged straight into the enemy fleet like an avalanche of metal and fury. Human ships rammed into Devourer constructs while alien vessels provided covering fire with weapons they were still learning to use. Captain Richardson's mining ship struck a massive enemy vessel head-on, its reinforced hull designed to smash through asteroid fields. The impact sent both ships spinning, but Richardson's crew kept firing even as their ship came apart around them. "This is Determination 2, Richardson's voice crackled over the communication channels as his ship's hull began to crack. "We're going down, but we're taking them with us." His ship's reactor overloaded, creating an explosion that destroyed 3 Devourer constructs and cleared a path for the following human vessels. It was exactly the kind of sacrifice that alien species had once called wasteful but now understood as necessary. The moon struck the center of the enemy formation like a cosmic hammer. The impact shattered dozens of Devourer ships and sent debris flying in all directions. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from Mars, and the shockwave disrupted the remaining enemy vessels' coordination systems. "Now!" Susan shouted. "All remaining ships, full attack." The final battle lasted 18 hours. Human vessels fought with desperate courage while their alien allies provided support and learned to fight like humans, with no concern for their own safety and complete focus on destroying the enemy. When the smoke cleared, Earth's orbital space was filled with wreckage from both fleets. The human losses were terrible, over 60% of their ships were gone, and the casualties numbered in the millions. But the Devourer main fleet was completely destroyed, their threat ended forever. In the weeks that followed, the political structure of the galaxy changed completely. The old council, which had been shown to be weak and divided when faced with crisis, was dissolved. In its place rose a new galactic federation with humanity playing a leading role. Ambassador Emma Thompson, now elderly but still sharp, stood before the inaugural Federation Assembly. The same chamber that had once echoed with laughter at human expense was now filled with respectful silence as she spoke. "You once thought we were too small to matter, too primitive to contribute, too emotional to lead," Emma said, looking out at delegates who no longer saw humans as a joke. "But when the darkness came for all of us, you learned that sometimes the galaxy needs someone willing to fight in that darkness." Captain Sarah Williams, the youngest ship commander in the new Federation fleet, prepared to lead the first joint expedition to explore beyond the galactic rim. Humanity was no longer the comic relief of cosmic civilization. They had become its guardians, the species others called when impossible things needed to be made possible. The stars belonged to all living beings now, and humans would make sure they stayed that way. The galaxy had learned to take humans seriously. It was a lesson written in the wreckage of their enemies and paid for with the courage of those who refused to let civilization die.